Okay, nice room. One thing I noticed about you guys when you were in the other break room, wow, you guys have it together. That is a great start. So I think that we should, let's give it to you guys. So in the lunchroom, you guys were not unruly. You were paying attention. Your eyes were to the front. You may have been, doing some things that was quiet, polite. The first thing there, you guys, as a whole, are on a path to success because you have the groundwork for being able to get that done. And I bet you that you have all sorts of dreams and plans in this room. And my idea in putting together this talk, and I gave this talk a few months ago at the Carson Scholarship Foundation, and I can tell you a little bit about what that's about. But my idea with doing this talk is being able to give you guys ideas, the youth ideas, on how to make those dreams a reality. Those dreams are there for a reason, guys. If you don't invest into those dreams, it's not going to happen. If you don't work at what those dreams are, it's not just going to happen by nothing. You have to invest and work hard in them for them to happen. And you have those dreams because they are a possibility. They used to tell people before, no, you can't dream that big. I mean, you can't just become the President of the United States. I'm here to tell you guys that's not true. If you dream big and you work hard, and I'm going to add one more thing to that, and you obey and you listen to your mother and your dad, those dreams can happen. And so I want to put down a little plan for you guys that's simple, but will hopefully stick with you guys. With what can help you guys to be successful as you go forward. And I want you to remember one really, really important thing, because I see kids like your age every day. That's what I do. I see 20 to 25 kids every day. And some of them are very young, some of them are teenagers, but they all have a potential. You guys all have a God-given potential. You are meant to do something in this world, and there are certain people that will help you connect to that. But there's nobody like your parents that's going to be helpful to your connecting to what you're supposed to do and accomplish. So obviously success means different things to different people, and the dictionary meaning of success is achieving wealth, respect, fame, and finishing up what you were doing, success. Yeah, wunderbar. And the last thing is that somebody is successful, somebody succeeds or finishes off or completes what they attempted. I want you to consider a new meaning in what success really should be, because that will lead you to your ultimate success in becoming, let's say, a doctor or an engineer or whatever it is that you are going to, or that you are meant to do and will do, is to become a good man or a woman who influences others well as well. So my husband and I picked from certain people who had been very, very successful in their fields to give you examples, and we thought that the sports field is one area where you can relate to, and you can think, oh wow, if that guy did that, I could do that too. And so there was a basketball coach at UCLA, and his name was John Wooden. And he said that success is a place in your mind. It's a peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction, knowing that you did your best. Okay, sometimes you didn't get that A, you didn't get that B, but you know that you did your best. If you truly, truly feel that you did your best and that you didn't know the material, but now you understand it, for that test, that was success. And that is part of, and you're on the path of becoming the person that you are meant to be, and that you are doing the most that you're capable of doing at that moment. Most of us are not working on that kind of success level all the time. We kind of wax and wane, and we take it all the way up here, and then we shine. And then we bring it down here because we get a little tired and things don't go so well, and that's where you sort of lag into your C's. But if you keep it up here, it's not about the grade. It's about every day going to school and doing the stuff that you do, and doing your homeschooling and learning from it and having that form the next brick of the person that you're being molded to be. So this guy, he was from a very impoverished background. And so he because he grew up in a farm without any electricity, he had a very strong work ethic. He couldn't cut corners. He had to do the job thoroughly, or the whole family would suffer. And so he became a 3-time All-American basketball player in his college years. And he returned to Indiana to teach at the college and to coach. So his framework for teaching or coaching his kids was you have to be virtuous. You have to be a person of integrity. And I would ask all of you to also take that with you. If you are successful but you don't have integrity and honesty, then you might as well not be successful, because you're probably bringing people down with you. So integrity and honesty is really the basis of all true and good success that will stay with you. And so he would forbid his players from cursing at each other and criticizing each other. And it's interesting to think of that. Criticizing is very different from critiquing, and it all comes with attitude. I can tell you didn't play well today, and I can tell you know what, you just didn't play well today. And it's completely different, and we should choose our tone, our attitude, so that we can build people up. And it sounds like by this that he was a person who would build people up, because if you don't talk to people, or if your mom and dad doesn't talk to you about what you're doing wrong, how would you know? But for us, it's in the tone that we come to you and say, you could be working better on these things. Let me show you how. And that's how you should learn to frame things. So he built what was called the Pyramid of Success, which is a teaching model to inspire students and teams to get the most out of their potential. And I don't know the Pyramid of Success so much, but I bet you that he would train mentors at the top, and those mentors would understand how to get to each person and their hearts and fulfill their potential. And when you do that, then you do the best job possible. So let me give you an example of how you guys can make this work. So as you're doing your homeschooling, I'm sure that you have some hours of service that you're supposed to be doing. Well, when you do those hours of service, don't just do them to check off the hours. I have so many high school students that come over and they want to do 4 hours in the practice. They sit in the front and they just and they come over with the clipboard and they say, Dr. Stein, come here, feel this. Sometimes I get a student who says, I'm going to take the kids and I'm going to teach them some things out there, and then they find the next kid who's supposed to do that program next year. And then we have an after-school program called the Mustard Seed Program. We have 20 kids a year that come in, and that program makes sure that they're training the leaders for the next year. Because you see, when you do that, you're making sure that others come behind, and you start making the environment better for all of you together. And that's what I want you to think about, that pyramid of success. You train the top, and you know that those people are good people, and that goodness will keep on flowing down. And so in his coaching career, he had a 7/8, an 80% winning record. That is absolutely phenomenal. And this all came from a man, and I'm pretty sure that he was a man of faith, a man of values. And there is nothing to stop each one of us from being like this gentleman. Doesn't look like much, just a regular guy, because it doesn't matter. You know, it's really funny. Some interesting thoughts that in your life, you will run across people that you don't know who they are, Never judge them on the outside. When I was heading off to for the first few days of medical school, I was in the car right behind this other student who was starting medical school as well. And we were both running late. I was running late. She was running late. We're both different cars. And she cut across right in front of this other little Civic. And she was riding in her mom and dad's car, and it was a really nice car. And so she cut that other person off. And then she got to school, to medical school, and she went and she sat, and she was very pretty, and she wore very nice clothes. And I came in back of her, and the third car followed us into the college. And I'm like, ooh, that's bad. Out steps our professor and our dean over biology. She was the one who was going to give us the next lecture. So she slowly goes on up, because she's going to get there 8:01, because she always does. And she goes over and points to the girl and says, "You young lady, stand up." Now, nobody thought anything of her, because she was driving like an old Civic, or it was a Honda Accord, actually. Nobody thought anything of her. And she went up and she went, "You, stand up, young lady." Doctors are not rude. Doctors are patient and kind. You do not have the essential things that it takes to be a doctor. You will leave my room today. You have no idea. When you look at this gentleman, you have no idea. If you saw him in jeans outside, you don't know who he is. You don't know who that person out there is. You don't know if they're a general. You don't know if they're a businessman. You don't know if they're the person that you're going to work for one day. And you don't know if they're a pauper. But we should always treat them like this guy was treating others, with respect and kindness. And so one of the other examples of poverty that rose to be worldwide fame was Maya Angelou. She's a poet, a well-known philanthropist, an activist over children's causes, and she said that success is liking yourself and liking what you do and liking how you do it. And you know, I'm reminded very often when I see that Paul said that he learned to be content in all situations, and how little we are like Paul, that you learn to be content in every situation. You know, it's not about liking where you are in 10 years, it's about enjoying and feeling comfortable where you are today. When you are that, you can transpose that into wherever you are, and you can be not happy but content and successful where you are. And so she worked as a fry cook, as a nightclub dancer, but always she gave her best. And I bet you that she thought success is liking what you do, not what you will do, not where I will live, what I will be, but liking what you do now. Even when it's tedious and I don't want to do calculus today, or my mom's making me wash the dishes today, and that's so boring. It's liking what you do, and that's the most difficult part of all. And it's a picture of her. She passed away, was it 2 years ago? And so I wanted to pick somebody that we would all be familiar with. Winston Churchill. You know, he was a lisper. He did not speak clearly, and he had to learn to orate. And it took him so much time to be able to do that. And because he had so much difficulty expressing himself, he had to learn his language, the English language, even better, and how to express himself, and then he had to go back to the classics. And because he had that weakness, he made that his strength. And that's very often what happens to all of us. If we dedicate that time to that, we take that weakness that we have. I can remember this. I played tennis when I was a kid, and my backhand, oh my goodness, my backhand was terrible. And I swung, and I swung, and I swung, and I swung, and at one point, my backhand became stronger than my forehand, because I was more proficient at it. I knew exactly where I was going to hit with that backhand. That happens to all of us. You take that impediment, that weakness, and you can turn it into your strength. And so he would say that my impediment is no hindrance. And actually, you can make your impediment your strength. The success is going, that is very important. So success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. It's actually without quitting. He was the guy who said, don't ever, 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 ever give up. And because of Winston Churchill's perseverance, we won World War II. So he said, we will never surrender. I love this line. It reminds you of Lord of the Rings that if we brace ourselves to our duties and bear ourselves, and that's the hardest part, just when you're in the middle, think about all those glorious stories. You're in the middle of despair and gloom, and the story looks like it's not going to end up well. What do you want to do? You want to flee. You want to leave. You want to say, this is not worth it. That is your finest hour. That is where you stay. That is where you give it your best. That is where you pray about it and you stick with what you knew at the beginning that you were supposed to do. And that is what he did. And then you can turn that around and men will say, this was their finest hour. And indeed, for Britain at that time, the United States, when we changed the course of history and got rid of Nazism over in Europe, I believe that was truly one of our finest hours. Thomas Edison said that success is 1% inspiration. So you can be very, very creative, but it really depends on what are you going to do with that creativity? What are you going to do with all of that talent? 99% perspiration. Invented many things, electric light bulb. And it was funny because I know a little story about Thomas Edison's mom, where the teacher realized that he had like a learning disorder and he couldn't express himself well and he was sort of scattered. And the teacher picked up on, even though that he was doing that he was very gifted. And she came back to the mom and said, that is a very special boy and deserves special attention. I will help you. And that mom listened to that and she said, wow, somebody came to me and told me that my boy was special and is going to give him special attention. And that turned the world around for him. And so I want you guys to remember that sometimes somebody else will help your mom to realize what can be accomplished with your efforts. And so what does success mean to me is to trying to reach the goals that you have in your life. But you have to do it by good principles. You can't just go ahead and say, well, I'm going to be a pediatrician, but I'm going to cheat on my tests and try to buy the final exam, because you're only fooling yourself when you do that. Because you're going to get to the end, and you're not going to be able to practice medicine or engineering or whatever it is because you've taken a shortcut. Success does not involve shortcuts. And so, I don't know who this kid is, but it looks a lot like me. It might have been me a long time ago. And so I grew up, if you haven't figured out that I have a very different accent from most of you, I grew up in New York City, and my parents are from a very little island in the Caribbean called the Dominican Republic. And so they were they came over, so I'm a first generation American. I spoke only Spanish at home until I was 4 years old. I loved Speed Racer, and I thought that he was my boyfriend on TV. And so I could say Speed Racer and Trixie before I went into pre-K. And then I was immersed in English, and by the end of that first year I could speak English fluently. And I didn't like, have any of you ever watched my Big Fat Greek Wedding? I was that girl. I was so embarrassed about my obnoxious, crazy Dominican family. They were loud, they loved to dance, and they had all sorts of food everywhere. They would take pails of food to the beach. Everybody else takes sandwiches. And we had to take pails of rice and beans to the beach. And that was my childhood, growing up in New York City. And I just thought that was the weirdest thing. And so we were not rich. We were, in fact, pretty poor, and we had lots of problems. My dad was an alcoholic. Well, a lot of my cousins were on welfare, but both my mom and my dad worked very hard, and my mom impressed on me good values, good virtues, and she made sure that I got a good grounding in morality. So I had decided, I came home one day, and when I was in 3rd grade, like I said before, and I said, I want to be a doctor. And my mom was like, oh, doctora, very good. And so my mother kept reminding me, you know you're going to be a doctor. And I'd be like, yeah, I said that in 3rd grade. Now, I'm in 10th grade now. And your parents will tend to see something in you. Do not discount that. Because they have, especially your moms, they have a sense of what you were meant to do. So when they say that, and you get kind of upset and frustrated, flustered, because they're saying something that doesn't make sense to you, just leave it at that. And you will see what God can do with that. And I grew up loving children all of my life. My brother was born, and I was 10 years old. And so I took to raising him, helping my mom like he was my own. And from there, my mother started a school in the Dominican Republic. And so I had to tutor those children even when I was 13 and 14 years old. And so that built into, imagine, that was before. I was 8 when I said I wanted to be a pediatrician. My brother was born, I was 10. But my mother's school started, and I was 13, 14. Nobody knew that I was going to have this kind of contact with children. And yet there the paths were starting to grow. And I said that I wanted to be a pediatrician who could change the outcomes of children. And so we started our own practice in North Carolina. And so that's me with the funny hat. And that's my crazy Dominican family. And they were crazy. I have a picture, and then they had the merengue going. And I didn't know that if you're Dominican, that your legs can just dance Dominican music. Until, all of a sudden I started growing up, and it's like, wow, I could just dance the merengue and stuff. But they would get around, and they would just start salsaing up and having the merengue stuff go. And this is one of our parties. But at the same time, everybody's life has a little bit of difficulty. And mine was no exception. So we moved. At this point, I'm a New York girl. I'm growing up. I know how to get everywhere. I could actually, at 12 and 13, I could make it into Manhattan. My mom worked at Lord & Taylor's. I could, I knew it all. And my mom didn't have to worry about me. I'd go to the library, pick out some books, and then go to my piano lessons. And that was not unheard of in New York City during my time. If any of you read a classic book like The Tree Grows in Brooklyn, I grew up, I was out on the streets, and I knew what time I was supposed to be back at home. And I went from that to having to go to the Dominican Republic when my family, when I was 13, and everything was you would think that would be open, and it was quite the opposite. It was a lot more controlled. And that was very difficult to adjust to. And then I had to learn how to read and write Spanish all over again. But here I'm going to tell you guys something very important about building yourselves. You can learn things like at 1/10 of the time that it takes an adult. So if you guys start to learn a language now, it'll be like this. You'll start listening. If you guys were if we were to take you guys and take you overseas and put you in a country and make you speak a language right away, you would feel like you're sinking for about a month. And you feel, I can't do this. And you keep on persevering, you keep on swimming to the top. You will come out knowing that language and actually thinking and dreaming in that language. That's how incredible your brains are. Kids that know more than language are smarter. So if any of you have the opportunity, because it builds your brains, any of you have the opportunity to learn another language when you're young, that's a great thing to do. Plus, it opens up windows to the world. able to go anywhere and get better jobs than the rest of us. And then the third part was I moved to Canada when I was 16 because my mom knew that, because she was her family came from a family of educators, and she wanted me to learn French. I didn't know French. English and Spanish, I thought that was a lot already. Now I have to learn French from zip. And I had to do, listen to this, biochemistry in French. That's difficult enough in English. I had to do mathematics, and then I had to do French in French. Really? And so, and at the end of the year, I love my family. I spoke French fluently. I could dream in French. I didn't want to leave. That's the other part. Kids are adaptable. You are able to adapt. You just have to persevere, and you can adapt. So take that in mind. When you don't like something at the beginning, you keep on going with it. You will mold yourself, and you will be able to change and become a better person. And so here's me in high school, please. No judgment. Okay. So some things to do. Pick somebody who's successful to model yourself. You all should have a mentor. When I was in medical school, I was having a very difficult time. I wasn't sure I was made for this. My family doesn't have doctors. Why did I choose this? I'm not smart enough. And I looked at Dr. Ben Carson. And Dr. Ben Carson was a person who came from a very humble background. And I thought, if he could do it, and he came from a single mom environment and from a very poor Detroit neighborhood, maybe I can do that too. And you know what? Wouldn't it be great if I could meet Dr. Carson someday and shake his hand and tell him what he meant to me? And that dream became a reality. But he was even more than that. I didn't just take a picture of him. He has asked me on several occasions to help him. And in fact, I was part of his healthcare coalition last year when he was running for president. And he thought that what I had to say would be helpful to him. That's the ultimate. But you guys think that there's something like that that is impossible for you guys. It's not impossible. Work hard, and it can happen. So, medical school, that was hard. Residency, oh my goodness. And you know what the worst part of residency was? That on top of everything, medicine is no longer welcoming to people who have a Christian and a moral ground, a worldview. And so they were not kind to me. And when I would talk about that, no, I would not be open to thinking about abortions or wanting to counsel teenagers about abortion, they were very unkind, and they were actually trying to get me not to be able to graduate. And because I liked to dress nicely, I still like to dress nicely, and I would show some courtesy and respect. They said that I was like Dr. Vogue or Dr. Glamour, and that was the only medical journal that I read. And so people will do these things. They will bully. Today that's sort of called bullying, I guess. But you have to learn to stand up for yourself. I wanted to prove to them that I was intelligent and that I could understand what medicine was, and I could be the best doctor. So you have to persevere. You have to decide at one point in your life you've made a decision what you'd like to be and why you'd like to be that, and you're just going to have to continue to go with that because you knew at that moment that that was true, and your mom and dad guided you towards that. And I tried to look at people who were successful and act like them, because you can't know these things unless you're taught these things. And the friends, remember this is very important, because you think the whole world revolves around what's going on in your school at that time. And your friends are calling your names, or they're not treating you nicely, and one day they're your friend and then they sort of forgot about you, and how come they do this? The reality is that your friends will probably not be your friends. in 15, 20 years. They will become wonderful memories of your childhood, but they won't necessarily be your friends. So remember that when it feels like it's so painful, and it really is. But that is part of the experience that's going to lead you on to better things. And so a couple of other things is that stay away from the kids who don't care about their future. They don't care about how they act. They don't care about the impression that they leave on you of themselves. Stay away from drugs. No matter what people try to say that pot and weed will not affect your brain, they are wrong. I can see the difference between a kid who's smoking weed a couple of times a week or even once a week and the one who's not doing it at all. Stay away from it at all costs. And I'm going to add one more thing, very important, that you're probably not going to get from a school program today, is that I don't call it abstinence, I call it waiting. In my mind, in Dr. Rose's mind, sex has no place in your age group. Too much complication. Just too much complication, and it's a barrier to getting to success. You push out as far as you can. My idea is until you get married, but you push out as far as you can, because that's going to be a barrier in small or in bigger ways to your success. Finish school, get the best grades you can, but not because you want the best grade, but because you want to develop that brain. Like I said, a C is really an A if you tried your best. Education and listening to your parents and being respectful and honoring them is the path to success. And when you don't have that, you learn from successful people. Serve. You're here to serve, and it's not yourself. Serve others. And when I'm teaching students how to do the same thing I do and have a heart for the next generation, and that to me is what really fulfills me. And when I see my children grow up and become successful in their own right and become parents who are successful and bringing up their children on their own. And so you're leaving a legacy of success behind. And I want you guys to think of that and do that as well. And you make your dreams a reality. That's me in a group of a whole bunch of 5th grade students. And you know, about 1/3 of these students were also patients of mine. And I think I used up all of my time, but I'm going to be over in the foyer to take any of your questions. Have a book. It's called Who Needs a Village? It's a mom thing. You may not have a lot of money, but your parents might want you to have a book that tells you about how to build yourself to be a pediatrician. Thanks for your time. You guys are fantastic.